joyous roars of the audience. Me, my weapon, the fist, fencing. A fight against myself. A mask covering my sweat. Angry roars of my team. Me, my weapon, the fist, fear. One of the biggest hurdles in our lives to becoming a great leader and a great learner is fear. Fear of looking back, fear of the unknown, or simply the fear of messing up. I was just a small child when this feeling of fear grew inside me and drew a boundary around me. I couldn't quite understand what it was that haunted me so much. Was it the weight of my parents' and coaches' towering expectations? Or perhaps it was the looming dread of defeat? Or maybe it was the fear of letting myself down. Since childhood, I had dreamt of only one thing: stepping onto the piste, representing my home state and eventually my nation. But most importantly, I wanted to represent myself. But obstacles and roadblocks came into my path where I questioned whether or not I'd be able to do it. Before every single competition, this crippling fear would take hold of me, rendering me petrified. The spotlight of attention, under which I stand in front of all of you today, or the cloud of uncertainty that overtakes our mind and messes it up. Fear doesn't hesitate, or I should say fear doesn't fear to be triggered by any of these factors. As I took each step on the piste and heard the crowd's cheers and jeers at every point scored, I found myself drawing more and more attention, more and more pairs of eyes fixed at me, fixed at my performance, and I became the target of their critical words every time my opponent scored. I became increasingly self-aware, and my movements naturally started to become less and less fluid. Doubts would plague my mind. What if I faltered? What if I no longer reigned supreme? What if I became the target of ridicule for not clinching victory? What if? They multiplied, consuming my confidence and eroding my belief in both my skills and my dedication. But more importantly, I lost belief in myself. This fear, it wreaked havoc, not just on my performance, but also on my mental well-being. Meanwhile, whispers behind my back started to grow louder and louder and louder. People marvel at her during practice. So what takes hold of her during competitions? Why is she not able to win a medal after so long? All my juniors would disrespect me, make fun of me. But now, I'm pretty sure that most of you seated in the audience today will agree with me when I say that preparing for something is much easier than being in that moment and performing. Like for instance, the most relatable example, preparing for an exam. It's much less stressful than sitting in that room for 3 hours straight, trying to figure out at least one question. Also why standing here today and giving this speech in front of you is much harder than the speech I gave in my room last night. There's nothing to fear when you're preparing for something. There's no attention, there's no uncertainty, there's no pressure. But being on the piste and fighting for every single point, like my life depended on it, was completely different. In that moment, fear becomes a force that drives a lot of our behavior, a force that drives a lot of our decisions. And as I witnessed others around me thrive, my motivation, it began to wane. I lost all my confidence, my self-belief, years of hard work, all down the drain. I naturally contemplated whether this sport truly suited me or not. A deep, lasting passion. 18 years of my life. The beauty of the game. Me, my weapon, the fist, love. Like it's most popularly said, love is the most powerful force in the world. And obviously, even more powerful than fear. And my love for fencing, it ran deep. And quitting was never really an option for me. And why would it be? I'd spent 8 years of my life. I'd sacrificed parties, my friends, my sleep. I'd given tears to this sport, sweat, and even blood. After training for three times each day, I would return home and I did not have the comfort of sleeping. I had to work on my assignments and homeworks because I had to stay on top of my academics as well. So, after giving everything I had to fencing, I was determined to turn things around for myself. I searched online for ways to deal with my fear and anxiety. That's when I discovered cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short. CBT is based on the concept that our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all interrelated. Our thoughts influence our feelings. Our thoughts and feelings drive our actions, and our actions link back to what we think and believe, and so on. Since I was a very young girl, my mother had always emphasized the importance of good, positive thoughts. I vividly remember that one day when I had lost my quarter-final match in senior nationals. And as a young girl of 14 or 15, I was crying miserably sitting on the staircase. That's when my mother took it upon herself to come and console me. So she asked me, in all seriousness, and I remember her exact words because that one conversation that I had had with my mother changed my life. She asked, Ira, tell me, what are your thoughts just before you set foot on the pist? And in that crying and miserable state, I proceeded to give her a reply, and I said, what do you mean? Obviously, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm afraid of how I'll face myself when I lose, how I'll face my coaches who have dedicated their lives to making me such a big and successful athlete. I'm afraid of facing you and Dad. Sometimes it reaches to an extent where I start wondering whether I'll be able to face myself the same way after I lose. This is your biggest problem, she replied. Why do you never think about how happy you will be when you win? How proud you will be when you're standing on that podium that you've dreamt of since you were the age of 9? It was through her that I was introduced to the concept of manifestation. I'm pretty sure all of you know what that is, but let me reiterate. Manifestation, in the simplest of terms, is putting our intentions and our thoughts into something positive and then watching it happen. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is, if you think it, it'll come true. Obviously, you have to work towards it. It's not a magic that, oh, you think about it and it'll happen. Now, let's do a short activity. I know you've closed your eyes a couple of times in this entire event, but for one last time, I want all of you to close your eyes. And I promise this won't take very long. Now imagine, you're standing in front of a huge mirror. Tell me, what do you see? Or rather, who do you see? Do you see a version of yourself that is masked and burdened by the fear of the unknown? Or do you see someone who knows how to appreciate themselves and their efforts for how far they've come? That day, oh, by the way, you can open your eyes now. That day, my mother's words changed the image of myself that I had been seeing for so long. Now I knew the simple mantra of overcoming my fear. It was, obviously, to change the thoughts associated with it. And as cliche as it sounds, especially to all our Gen Z kids, I immersed myself into motivational speeches, meditation, yoga, and other activities that were aimed at bolstering my self-assurance. Before every match, I would close my eyes for 5 minutes and visualize the entire match. The same fist, the same jury, the same opponent. But my thoughts, they were different this time. I visualized that with every minute passing by, I was scoring every point. I won at the end and I was standing on that podium with a medal around my neck. So, all of you, tell me, what is the one thing that motivates you to get out of bed every single day? And I want you to think about it seriously. I don't want answers like, oh, my alarm clock, my mother's shouting that the school bus is here. No. What is the one thing that motivates you to put 200% of yourself every moment? To overcome the left shoulder noises that tell you to give up every second. Perhaps it is the love for something that excites you and brings you joy. For me, it was my right shoulder constantly reminding me of how fencing is that one journey that I never want to end. A journey that might have some speed bumps or a really steep slope, but one that never ends. And so, through fortitude, tenacity, and unyielding perseverance, I transcended the boundaries of fear that had long impeded my progress. And guess what? This time, I stood atop the podium. Actually, not in my thoughts. The stadium resonating with thunderous applause and jubilant cheers. But most importantly, this time, I had crossed the boundaries that fear had set for me. Because what is fear? Think about it. Is it not just a devil in our minds that is slowly eating up our potential to achieve higher dreams? A limit that forces you to do much less than what you're capable of. The overthinking noises that bleeds out our ears like scratching a fork on a blackboard. But once determined to cross this barrier that confines you, fear is just some background music that motivates you to do better than what you set out for yourself. If we do not figure out a way to reprogram our minds, to overcome our fears, then we will never be able to succeed in our own specific missions in life. So may it take sleep or sweat or even blood. The choice of letting fear defeat you or defeating fear itself lies in your hands after all, doesn't it? So me, my weapon, the fist, bring it on. Thank you.